A dash of mystery, a sparkle of magic, and all things cozy. Join your host, Elle Hartford, for Cozy Alchemy, a proud member of the Authors on the Air network.
Hello and welcome to Cozy Alchemy, the podcast all about cozy, tea-rific books. I'm Elle, and my guest today is Rebecca Thorne, whom I did not warn that I was going to be making a pun.
I love the pun.
Yeah. And we are, of course, here to talk about Rebecca's Tomes and Tea series. But first, she's going to start us off with a game of Two Truths and a Lie.
Okay, I had to think about this because every time I'm asked this, I have to summon up anything real about my life. I'm like, oh no, everything's fake. Everything's made up. Number one, I have failed an FBI polygraph. Number two, Can't Spell Treason Without T was my 7th book. And number 3, I have 3 dogs.
Ooh, okay. Ooh, failing the polygraph sounds dramatic. And of course, Can't Spell Treason Without T is the first book in the Tomes and Tea series.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah. So that would mean you'd written 6 of them before this series. We were just talking about dogs before we started recording, so I think I have some insider information on that.
I tried to throw that in to make it easy.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I'm going to guess that the first one is the lie.
That is untrue. The first one actually is quite true. Yes. My lie is actually that Treason was my 15th book written, not my 7th.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, okay. It was quite a long road to get that there. But yeah, I actually I failed 2 FBI polygraphs in college. And they thought that I did drugs and serious crime. So I was getting a degree in criminal justice at the time, and I did get that bachelor's. And then I immediately pivoted out of that field because I was like, wow, this is kind of shit that you guys judge candidates based off of this thing that the creator said wasn't even true and it's not admissible in court, but cool.
Well, right, yeah. And I'm glad that you provided the extra context because the natural follow-up question was, why were you
what'd you do? Yeah. I was actually interviewing for an internship at the Hoover Building in DC. And I would have gotten it if I'd gotten through the freaking polygraph. And that was quite devastating at 18 years old or 20 years old.
Right. Obviously, if you weren't a drug user or a criminal, clearly.
Well, and I grew up in a Mormon area. I'm not Mormon, but everybody around. So we didn't drink at all. Our idea of a party in my high school was board games, Monopoly, right? Literally it was so pathetically sad that when they came back with that, I was like, that really? You're going to go with that? I don't know why. I think I reacted ever so slightly and they were looking for something. And then they called me back for a second one. And of course they told me what questions I failed the first time. So then I was like, no, I did not do these. And then the second time it was wee. And they were like, no, sorry. If they'd done the background check first, I think they would have been like, oh, that's probably not true. But they did not. They did the polygraph first, which is stupid. Polygraphs are the worst. In case anyone here is listening, polygraphs are the worst. They are not admissible in court. And the creator of them has actually said that they do not work. And the government still insists on using them for most things. So
we do cozy fantasy, obviously, a lot on this podcast. We also do a lot of cozy mysteries. So.
Oh, there you go. So mysteries, yeah. I feel like most fantasy books would love to have some kind of truth serum, some truth magic,
Yeah.
But I actually would love to read a book where there's truth magic, but it's flawed because that's what our reality is. No one knows if you're telling the truth. If you're a pathological liar, you could pass it right away,
Yeah.
So
no,
yeah.
And it's coming from the mystery world, it's so tempting, but then again, you don't want to make it too easy, right?
The closest I got was a heist story for book 3 of the Tomes and Tea series. Tea with the Altar is a heist story, and that book was the worst of the whole series to write because I had to figure out who knew what, when, and how fast that information was coming out, but how can I keep it a secret from the reader for a long enough time that it's interesting when it shows up. It was a mess.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Yes. Okay. But we are here specifically to talk about book 4.
Yes.
Which is Alchemy and a Cup of Tea.
Yes.
Just recently came out when this goes live. Can you tell us a bit about that one to get us started?
Yeah. So Alchemy and a Cup of Tea is the final book in the Tomes and Tea quartet. So that series is over. Keanthan Reyna's story is pretty much closed off and done. and I am very excited to dive back into future quartets in this world. So I have another 2 quartets planned in the same like area that I haven't started writing yet, but like they're in my mind, and hopefully I'll get to write them someday. So book 4 is kind of like a wrap up of Keith and Raina's story. And their story initially started in book 1 when they left their intense fantasy lives to open up a bookshop that serves tea. And by book 4, their bookshop tea house is so popular that it's actually flooding their town with tourists. So like tourism becomes a really big problem. So I was kind of trying to identify like I watched this happen with my hometown, where just like a lot of people came in, and I wanted to kind of identify like how that can destroy a community that was there before when a lot of people flood to a place that is supposed to be wonderful, right? Like you created something wonderful, and then now how do you protect what it was, right? And there's no easy answer to that. I actually do have a city planner in one of my servers, and they read the book and they were just like, this is actually very accurate in the way that like these problems have beset the community, how the community responded to these problems, and then their solution, which is not easy. Like there is no easy solution, you know. At first they're like, oh, we'll just all be really mean and no one will want to come, but like they still do because there's celebrities that live there. And then they're like, oh, and you know, and then maybe we'll just close off the gates and we won't physically let them in, but then they're lining out outside the gates, you know. So like, what do you do when there's an influx of tourism? So that was the cozy fantasy plot, I think, of book 4. But then there's also a secondary plot that is a little more action-packed, I guess, and it's focusing on a rogue alchemist that is causing problems. So Raina starts out the book kidnapped, and then that's resolved very quickly, and that like literally like a chapter in, it's resolved. And so then they're kind of figuring out like, well, who kidnapped her and why did they want her and what are they actually looking for? And it kind of unravels this bigger mystery over time that they have to kind of address while they're dealing with the tourists in Tawny. So
while dealing with tourists. Yeah. And I love that you brought that up because I had even written that down as a question. Like it is so funny and very relatable.
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely, I can see how you like came to put that in the book.
Yeah, it was definitely something that I was not expecting to write in book 4, but I try to ask like what's the natural progression of their lives with all this, and I thought about like I mean, I think we've all noticed it, right? Like all the best places in our cities are crowded now. Like I go to like when I was in Phoenix before we moved to Denver, I would go to all my favorite coffee shops that I've been going to for years, and I wouldn't even be able to find a table because there's so many people there. And I was just like, what happened? like I used to come here and there was like 2 people and I'd write all day and no one would care, you know? And now it's like, oh, there's table limits. They are taking the plugs away because they can't have too many people. They want to keep people. It's just, and I was just like, what would Keith and Raina do in that situation, right? Like if they're trying to create this cozy fantasy coffee shop, tea house, you know, bookstore, how are they supposed to entertain people when there's too many people in the door? And that was a really fun question to kind of explore.
I love that, and because we have talked a couple times with different authors on this podcast about cozy stories, really of any stripe, fantasy, mystery, romance, whatever, where the characters end up dealing with internal problems that the author also has, right? So it's like anxiety fitting in, you know, like these sorts of like internal problems. I love that you have taken a problem that you had externally as an author, which is that I can't write in my favorite cafe because there's too many people here, and given it to your
genuinely characters. That like I felt like I couldn't.
Now, so you said that you didn't necessarily expect like tourists to be something that you would be writing about. But did you kind of know that you were going to close off the arc? Like, did you know that book 4 was kind of going to be the end and you were going to wrap things up? Like,
yeah. So I was really inspired when I was young by Tamara Pierce's quartets. The Alana series, the Kel series, the Dane series. I loved how, like, that was the first time I think I'd ever read a series like that where there were companion novels in the same world with like the characters that we loved coming back in for cameos, but it was a whole different story in a different area that we didn't really get to see a lot of before. I love them. I devoured them when I was young. So I had always had it in my brain that I would love to do something like that. And when I wrote the first Homes and Tea series, like book, I kind of was like, oh, it's a quartet. Like it's a quartet. There's 4. And at the end of 4, I'll close out their story and then I'll pick new characters and move on from there. I do think I'm going to run into the Alana trap a little bit in this one because I have ideas for a lot of other characters, but I don't think any of them are going to resonate quite as well as Keith and Raina have resonated with my readers. They're just a very distinct couple. So like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to compete with myself, I guess, for future quartets. But I do have a couple ideas, and I've got some really cool like world building exploration that I want to do. The next quartet that I have planned is going to be a pirate war on the southern seas. So Dregs at the end of this one like goes missing. They're not dead. Like, I don't know. Everyone's like, "Did you kill off Dregs?" I'm like, "No, I would never kill off Dregs." No, Dregs is not dead. Like, they're gonna come back in a big way with new pronouns in the next quartet, and that should be a lot of fun to kind of identify like the pirate dynamics and the politics of that down in the southern seas. And then the third quartet is going to be set 10 years after that quartet with Keith and Raina's daughter, Quinn. And she's going to go north of Dragon Country and explore what's up there. So,
cute. Okay, but there is a plan to go out into the future. Yeah.
I am with the 4-book quartet. There was a period where we thought we were going to slim it down to 3 and make it a trilogy, because when there was like a miscommunication where when the Tor bought the series, I thought they only bought 3 books, not 4. And they thought they only bought 3 books, not 4. And then my agent called me and was like, "Hey, they just found out it's a quartet and they want to buy the 4th one." And I was like, "Are they going to pay for the 4th one, or are they just going to like lump it in with the, you know?" She's like, "No, they're paying for the 4th one." I'm like, "Well, shit, if they're paying for it, we're back on with our little quartet, right?" Like, I had the whole series planned out when I first started it. So yeah, I was excited to give. It was funny because I wrote Alchemy and A Cup of Tea in like 9 days. Like, it took me like 9 days start to finish, like blank document to the time. Yeah. And then when I submitted it to my editor, I edited that book in like 4 more days or 5 more days. And that was the version we sent to print. So 2 weeks total, start to finish. And I think it's the best book of the series. Like, it's my favorite of the 4 because I was like, it's like the epilogue, like the ending, right? Like the climax of that quartet happens in book 4. And it's like everything that we've been building for, like, you had to work for it. You have to lay the foundation to get these characters to a place where you can really have fun with them. And that was where I was in book 4. Like, I was having fun with their dynamics, with their bookstore, with their, like, they both had griffins to fly around on. I got to dive into the magic Harry, you know, there was like all these magic systems I knew I wanted to dive into. It was so fun. And I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it because I'd been thinking about it for years, you know? So I was like, "Oh yeah, this is book 4. Here we go." You know? And I was like, I had a blast. It was great. So.
Got it. Okay. Now, follow-up question to that though. In terms of your planning, are you writing down your plans or is it all in your head?
I'm not a big plotter. I wrote a craft book called the 5-sentence method because that is what I use. I write 5 sentences for every book and they correlate with different plot points that happen throughout the novel. So by the time I have those 5 sentences, I have a roadmap of the entire book, but there's a lot of freedom to kind of wiggle around with the other spaces, like the spaces in between the 5 sentences I can kind of play with. So I knew roughly what the book idea was going to be about. When I plan a series, I usually do like a sentence or 2 per book. And then when it's time to write that book, I expand it into the 5 sentences. And then sometimes if it's really stubborn, I'll expand it into like chapter guidelines and I'll do like this chapter, and there's 23 to 25 chapters per book. So like I can typically go in and do 23 sentences and that's good enough to plot out, right? And then I just kind of wing it when I'm pulling things open. But the Tomes and Tea series, I didn't need to go chapter by chapter. The 5 sentences were enough to just kind of play with. Like, those characters are just fun. So like whatever situation I put them in will typically get me through another 10,000 words just because they're interesting to watch. So I've had some other characters after that I have not had that easy of a time with, but those ones were, you know, Keith and Raina are just fun. They're just fun.
Yeah, I love that because obviously we've talked on the podcast before about, you know, being a character-driven author, and I know various forms and what that means. But the fact that like sometimes the character will just take over a scene or will do something different than what you expect. But I like this interpretation of like, they're just fun to wind them up and put them in the scene and let them go.
Pretty much. That's pretty much how I operated in most scenes. Like, my characters don't really go off script hardly ever. They just like, but I think it's because my script is very loose, right? So like I put them in a situation and I'm just like, go. And they're like, okay, you know, and then depending on their motivations and their abilities and their desires, they'll do a bunch of different things depending, right? Like, So I don't really, there are certain times that I'll rewrite a chapter because I think that I can find like a better version of it, right? Like I'll write a chapter where they're like talking at a kitchen table, and then I'll be like, this would be better if it was in the rain in a thunderstorm, and I'll pick them up and I'll put them in that, and I'll just rewrite the words around them. But that doesn't happen too often anymore. Like these days I typically write what I write, and I think a lot of it does have to do with like going indie and then signing with a traditional publisher and then booking multiple series out on top of that. I don't have a lot of time to play around with my writing like in the way that I did before I was known, right? Like now I have deadlines that I really can't wiggle around on much. So I have to kind of get ready to produce when I need to. So yeah, which is nice. Like I think I'm at a writing level that like most of my books are going to be a decent level of good, even if I just churn them out. But I do miss some of that like teasing exploration where I'm like, what if I tried this chapter this way? Like I don't really have the luxury of that anymore.
Fair. Well, and on that note, because you did say, so Can't Spell Treason Without Tea was your 15th, you said,
15th,
right?
yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So has your writing process evolved? I mean, did you start out doing your 5 sentence book outline and like from the beginning?
Not at all.
Okay.
The 15 books or the 14 books I wrote before Treason include the books that I wrote when I was like 11, right? So like I wrote, I think like 6 books through high school and college. And then I really dove into it after college to like try and get published. And that was when I started learning, like reading craft books, learning plot structure, learning character development. I kind of winged it before that point, but I read a lot, So like the stuff, even when I pull up like the stuff from like when I was like 15, like I'll go back and I'll reread it, and it's not bad. It's not good, because like I was 15, but like it's not bad. Like you can tell that I was reading a lot of books at the time and absorbing the plot of how those books connected together, right? Like you could tell that I was absorbing things, even if I didn't really know why. And I think that is the flaw of a lot of authors that get stuck in the middle point. Like publishing has a middle point all its own, but like if you're trying to get into publishing and you've been trying for years and you can't, I think that that's usually what happens is like we assume that because we read a lot and because people say our books are good, that's enough. And what I learned in my 20s is that what ended up being enough is me being able to kind of dive in and learn how story structure works and align it with what I already knew, even if I didn't know how to verbalize it. So like I knew a lot of the story structure beforehand, but learning about how that can break down and knowing where I can break the rules now that I know what the rules are, that elevated my writing to a totally different level. Like it was just honestly shocking. So I think that was really useful. And that's where I'm very glad that Treason was the first breakout book I had, because the books that came before it weren't ready. Like they just weren't ready. There were a couple that I think might have been, but like for the most part, the books that I started querying with, the books I started trying to get an agent and sell at 22 or 23 years old were not the books that should have been out.
Fair. Well, and okay, so what I'm hearing, learning this, essentially the theory, right? And like
like
that kind of intuitive feel and bringing
right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I think that that's the difference between like an amateur and a professional, right? Like in any field, you can know how to, like, if you're like into hobbyist carpentry, right? And you're like building things, you can know how to build things. But like once you elevate your tool set, once you elevate your knowledge level, once you elevate like what kinds of wood are there? What are they best used for? How do they, join together, right? Like, or like mechanics, right? Like we can fiddle with our car all day long, but there's going to be a boundary level where we start to understand the mechanics of how that car functions and therefore identify problems in that subsect because we know how the car functions and this is wrong. And therefore we can trace it back, as opposed to just opening the hood and being like, this looks fine. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's the difference between someone working out of their garage and someone working out of a shop, right? Like, I think that that's important to remember, because people often think that creative pursuits don't need to have that kind of level. Like if you're talented, you're talented, but like there's the level of professionalism that needs to be had in a competitive industry. And if you're not able to bring in that competition level, like you're not able to raise to that competition level, you'll never make it. And then there are people who have raised to that level who still don't make it. I'm like, that just sucks too. So
well, yeah.
Yeah.
Very true. No, but this is fascinating because I was recently at a writing conference thinking about this sort of thing as well.
I love writing conferences. They're so interesting. Uh,
Yeah.
they're like, that's another piece of advice. Like, if anyone here is a writer and you have the ability to go to a writing conference, you will learn so much just by being present. Like, I go to conferences all the time, even though I'm not learning anything new now. Like, I just love to sit in the back and absorb. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Like,
It's true. And you never know, like, maybe just the one random thing that you needed to be reminded of, you're going to
yeah.
hear.
Or like, there's one, because like everybody has a different method of plotting, everybody has a different method of editing. And you may be in a classroom with one person who had the method that clicks with you. And all of a sudden now your writing jumps up leaps and bounds because you happen to be in that room learning that one method that makes it better, Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
great.
I like that very much. But especially because, yeah, as I was sitting in this conference, like, learning is very good. Sometimes it goes into overthinking, right? And thinking, because, like, a lot of us tend to think, well, if it doesn't come naturally, then I'm just not good enough.
Yeah,
Or
I'm
I'm
just
not
not cut out for it. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I like this idea of a way blending the two is what gets you
Right.
forward.
Well, and I think that that is the trap that creative endeavors tend to pull people into. Like, if I can't, like for example, I would love to be an artist someday, and it's on my docket. Like, I've got a list, I'd also love to learn to play the piano. I'm not naturally talented in those things. Like, if I wanted to learn, I have to get over, and there's like a hump for some people, and for some people it's like a slope, right? Like, really easy, like low slope, and you could just kind of trod your way along until and suddenly you look back and you're at the top of this mountain and you're really skilled, but it didn't feel like a slog because you were just like stumping your way up this very gentle slope. But then for some people it's like a mount, like you're scrambling up a rock, right? At the very
Right.
beginning to get to that same place, and it feels like it's so much harder. And I do think as you get older, the ability to absorb new things goes away, right? Like, unless you're constantly challenging yourself, the ability to absorb new things goes away. We become experts in certain fields and we're like, well, I'm already an expert in this field. Why would I need to learn this one? And I think that that is a trap that a lot of people fall into, especially when it comes to something like writing. Like, they put down a book on paper and it's not the book they saw in their head. And they're like, well, I'm not meant to be a writer. And I'm like, okay, but even writers have to edit. Like, editing is its own skill, and you have to learn how to do it if you want to succeed in any point. So yeah, I don't know. It's just it's inspiring to meet authors, but it's also a little frustrating sometimes when they don't quite recognize that this is like a pursued endeavor. Like, you have to choose it and you have to try every day to make it better. Like, you have to experiment with new things and hope.
What it makes me think of, quite honestly, is alchemy, a process of experimentation, also transformation, combining things.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
that said, I'm a little biased because obviously the
I was
podcast
like, yeah, you're not biased at all. This is a
I
perfect
know.
book for you to
Yeah,
talk
I know.
about.
I know. Well, my mystery fantasy series is the Alchemical Tales. So, like, I'm coming from a place where alchemy is very cool and exciting, but, like,
Yeah,
alchemy is a little scary in your
it
book.
can be. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
and I definitely had a lot of fun diving into that. Like, the ending of book 4 is very dramatic. Like, it's because alchemy is a very scary kind of magic. Like, it's not as control. Like, I feel like people were lulled into a false sense of security because Kianth, one of my main characters, is an elemental mage, and she's the most powerful elemental mage in existence. So, like, she just talks to the elements and they do what she wants. She's like, she tells the air, keep the bugs away, and the air is like, no worries, I got you, and it just like shoves all the bugs away, right? Like, she like walks into a forest and it's pulling branches out of her way so that she doesn't have to like hit her face on the branches as she's walking in the woods, right? Like little things like that. And so, like, it was a very cozy, like, the magic in this book was very cozy from start to finish. And then there was this kind of unspoken blood magic that was used, and like, they don't really talk about it very much in the first 3 books, but it's always kind of on the peripheral, right? Like, we know it's there, we know it's scary, we've seen it used, and we're not really sure why. But it's like, for people who can't do elemental magic, this is what they found, right? Like, this is the magic that they're funneled into. So exploring that and those relations between that was very interesting to me, especially when I started to relate it to the dragon magic that was in this book as well, because dragon magic kind of has no bounds. Like, it's time, it's space, it's everything you can imagine that magic would be. It's that, And so how do you relate to like elemental magic, this blood magic, and then this like all powerful magic that like only dragons can use, Like,
yeah,
it was a very fun thing to kind of explore in this book.
yeah. No, absolutely. That's so cool. Okay. Now, I did want to specifically ask you, often we do describe like cozy genres using smallness, right? Like little coffee shop, like quiet moments in time, daily life.
Hmm.
But you do have this dash of adventure and like bigger things that are going on in the world that your characters are very much involved with.
Yeah.
How do you approach that balance? Like, what are your thoughts on what, the confines of cozy, if there are?
Yeah. Well, and so this is so interesting for me to talk about because I was with Cozy from like the very beginning, right? Like I read Legends and Lattes in March, and I left my agent in April to write Tomes and Tea in June and July because I saw it coming like a freight train. I read Legends and Lattes and was like, oh, this is the next big genre. And maybe if I write fast enough, I can be the divergent to his Hunger Games. And like that worked out very, like, I don't think I hit that caliber, but like it worked out very well for me because I was one of the first on the scene, right? Like no one else knew about Cozy until Tor re-released it in a massive sense, but the indie community was paying attention. And because of that, we were able to kind of get in and I was just barely touching the indie community at the time because I wanted to learn how to self-publish. So I saw Cozy Fantasy. I knew it would fit my brand. I knew that it would fit my writing style. And I had a bunch of ideas that I could like basically twist into what this was. So initially, Keanth and Reyna were supposed to be innkeepers at the edge of Dragon Country. And they were supposed to be watching a very eclectic cast of guests at their inn that were going into Dragon Country to steal from the dragon's hordes. And they stop at this inn. This was like the last stopping point, and then they go into Dragon Country and do their adventuring and then come back. So they were supposed to be like watching the adventurers. It's very cozy. Yeah. But like the reason I never wrote it 2 years earlier was because cozy wasn't a thing. And the low stakes option of that story was not allowed in traditional publishing at the time. Like if I handed it to my agent at the time and she was like, make it more. Where's the tension? Where's the drama? And I was like, there's no drama. They're just innkeepers. Like, so like when cozy came around, I was like, oh, that story, that's the story I'm going to write. And I pulled it out and I twisted it to make it more Legends and Lattes-esque so that it would feel like Legends and Lattes, but be different. And in the meantime, I wanted to take the cozy genre and to make it into something that was a little more high tension, high stakes. Not a lot, but like there are people that read my books and think that they're too high tension. They're too high stakes for cozy because they have more than Legends and Lattes. And that's just because when I'm writing a book, I need a little bit of excitement and energy and adventure, or I get bored as a writer. So like I would not be able to be in this space at all if I didn't add those things into those books. But more than that, I think it's important to remember that genre as a whole is a made-up construct. Like it is only for booksellers and librarians and publishers to sort books in a bookstore so that readers can come in and find them, right? Like fantasy exists, but there's a lot of books that aren't really fantasy or they're not really sci-fi, but they're like put in those sections anyway because that's the closest they can get. And the more you get away from those genre conventions, the harder it is to find a spot in a bookstore for your book, meaning the harder it will be to sell your book. So that comes into the business side, right? Like if you can't clearly confine, and that was why cozy didn't have a chance until Legends and Lattes kind of blew it out of the water, because there wasn't a cozy fantasy section in a bookstore before that point. So if you had a book that wasn't really cozy, if people picked up a fantasy and expected stakes and tension and energy, they wouldn't buy that book because it didn't have those things. So when I wrote this series, I wrote it to fit into the cozy fantasy genre. I wrote it to sit alongside Legends and Lattes, but I also wrote the sequels with Tamara Pierce in mind because in my mind, she's timeless. Like people are still picking up her books and they're still loving her books because they're really, really good. And I wanted to fit in that category more than anything, right? Like cozy fantasy may come and go, but I wanted my books to stay, even if they're not sorted in the cozy fantasy genre, in 10 years, right? Like if cozy fantasy fades away in the next 6 to 7, and I don't think it will at this point, but like if it does, I think my books will still have a place in the fantasy section because they're just adventurous enough, like I was trying to bridge that gap so that they could continue to sell for the next 10 years because I have all these series planned and if they're, if they run out, if they get obsolete, that's kind of useless for me,
You want to have some idea of longevity or stability. So as a writer, you prefer to have some sort of adventure and some stakes in your books, right? Is the coziness, is that of equal interest, of equal value, even if it doesn't necessarily keep you going forward, but like...
Yeah, I think that is true. I think the reason I was such a good fit for cozy is because I do feel like a lot of people forget when they're writing cozy fantasy that you can't, and I say this a lot, you can't appreciate the warmth of a fire if you haven't just been out in the cold. Like, you can't appreciate the warmth of a cup of tea. Like, it doesn't fill your soul that way. Someone can, if you're in a comfortable environment and someone hands you a cup of tea, you're like, hey, thanks. But like, if you've just been walking out in that ice storm and you come inside into a warm inn and there's a friendly face and they hand you a cup of tea, that means more because you were just out standing in an ice storm, you know? Like, I feel like that's something that is inherent to cozy. Like, just because my books have stakes doesn't mean that it's not cozy. It just means that it's looking at the whole equation of cozy instead of just the spit out the comfort moment at the end. You know, like, you have to have that tension and that chaos before they can have a quiet moment together to talk about what happened with a cup of tea.
I love that, especially because the other side of this coin on this podcast is always mystery, right? Cozy mystery has been around longer than cozy fantasy.
Forever, yeah.
Right? And I think in cozy mystery, I think it's a little bit easier and more direct even to get to what you're saying because you have murder.
I think that's why cozy mystery had such a foothold for so much longer than cozy fantasy, because I mean, realistically, cozy fantasy was perfectly primed. Like, there's a ton of books that were written years ago that fit into the cozy fantasy genre perfectly now. But they weren't sorted that way before because genre is fluid, right? Like, genre is made up. So, like, it is very interesting to me that cozy mystery had such a foothold, but the idea of cozy fantasy was like, no, you know, and I don't really know why. But, like, yeah, like, cozy mystery has that built in. Like, you find a body and that's traumatic.
Yeah.
And now you're going to solve the mystery, like, and that's happy, you know, like.
Right. It does make the aspect of coming together as a community and like finding family and all this stuff a lot more precious.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Like the idea of protection after a trauma is inherently cozy, you know, like knowing that you have something bad happen, but then you can look around and see all the people rallying to you. That's cozy.
Absolutely. I do think we should touch on humor because it is absolutely a part of your books.
Yeah, it's a huge part of my life as a person. So like, I am a flight attendant as well, and I started working as a flight attendant with United Airlines, which is very professional, very cool, you know, cool. You wear your 2-inch heels, and then only once you take off and the passengers aren't looking. That was where I started, and I hated it because I would make jokes to people. I'm like, no one got it, no one understood. They would like stare at me, and I'm like, okay. I quit United and I got hired by Southwest Airlines, and that was a perfect fit. I've been there for 11 years because they let me joke and they let me be myself and they let me laugh, right? Like, I think it's important to have humor in life. I think it's important to make fun of things because, like, life sucks, you know? And like, if you're not identifying the moments that suck, I also think too, like, the humor is kind of an area where I actually feel like my books are almost like AI proof. I'll hesitate to say that, but I do think that is something that like AI can't replicate because a lot of humor stems from not jokes, but human experiences, right? Like the things that are funny to us are funny because they're relatable as a human, right? So like I have this one scene in Alchemy where Kianth sneezes in the cold and then snot drips down her nose, and then she wipes it on her shirt, and then it smears the sleeve of her shirt, and then she's staring at it trying to like rub it with her other shirt, like her other sleeve, to like get it away, and the whole time her wife is just watching her do this, like with just like a deadpan expression, like she's just like, wow, like they're in like a very important meeting right now, and she sneezes, she gets the snot, she's rubbing the snot, she's like hoping nobody notices, she's like trying to do it sneakily, and her wife is just sitting there staring at her. And then they make a comment about it and she makes a pun, you know? And it's like that pun was funnier because that whole situation was so human, right? Like AI doesn't have bodily fluids that leak out of their nose and smear their clothes. Like AI will never get that, but that's funny to read. And that makes you like the character more because that lifts them off the page. Like that character is not just like words on a page. That character is a person, and that person is like someone that you could be friends with because like, oh, I've done that too, you know, like, and that's the human connection, right? Like that's where AI will never accomplish that ever. Unless they're stealing it, you know, like, right. Like it can't do it. So I think I actually think that humor is going to become the next big wave. If I'm being honest, I feel like humorous books are going to become the more popular books as we move forward, especially considering how dark and sad the world is right now. Like people need to laugh, and books that make you laugh make you turn pages faster because you feel like you know the characters.
This is so true. Humor is very endearing, right?
Yeah. And it's hard to write. Like it's very hard to write well.
Yeah. You have tips that you would give other folks for writing humor?
I think if I have any tips, it would be to pay attention to the people around you and like note the things that make you laugh and then put those in your books, right? Like some way, somehow. Like I think I almost had a leg up on humor because I work for an airline that encourages you to be jokesters around your passengers, right? Like I was telling jokes on the intercom pretty much from day one at Southwest. Like I was brand new and I was like telling jokes on the intercom, you know, and then I'm around people that like that sense of humor. So the people on my planes are really funny too. So like I've had a bit of luck watching hundreds of thousands of people over, 11 years come in and out of my airplanes, and they're fun and they're funny and they're interesting. And I've been able to kind of take bits of those humanity and put that in my writing. But I think it's just like, pay attention, like go out and watch people and talk to people and engage with people and talk to people outside of your circles, because like you never know what will make you laugh outside of your circle.
I love that. I love the way that comes back around to just the writing element of reading a lot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Reading. Right. Like paying attention to your like, I think too that this is something that's important for humans these days. Like when the world is feeding you such bad stuff constantly, all the time, every day, you're watching the media and it's telling you how the world is burning. Go outside and literally touch grass. Like go outside and sit on your patio and watch the people walking by your front door and like start to wonder what their stories are, and like watch how they interact with the people around them, right? Like you don't even have to talk to them. You could just sit and have a cup of tea as they're walking by your front door. And that is a really nice, like I go to coffee shops and I won't even write. I'll just sit there with a cup of coffee and just watch people watch, and like not creepy. Like I'm not staring at one person in particular, but like I'll bring like a notebook or something and I'll take notes of like the people in the coffee shop and like sort them into like caricatures almost, and then start to dive deeper and be like, oh, this person's like the tortured artist, but like what else about them is interesting? Oh, well, they've got, like a flower hat on, and like that's kind of cute. I wonder where they got that. Maybe they're thrifters, right? Like, maybe why would they go thrifting? Well, maybe they're, they don't have a lot of money, or maybe it's the thrill of the hunt, like, and you never really know. You could dive down a rabbit hole for hours about that kind of thing. And then you've got characters for your next book.
I love that, both as an exercise, but also, like you were saying, as an antidote to like just like the general panic, right?
Yeah, like I feel like the idea of touching grass became an insult for people, but like genuinely, please go outside. like genuinely, it's so good for you. Go look at your tortoise and like pet its head, because like tortoises are so cute. Whatever you have, whatever you are, just like go outside and do something that is not on a computer, because it's just good. It's good for you as an author, and it's good for you as a person.
Absolutely. Well, okay. And while we're giving advice, what advice would you give to yourself if you could talk to yourself back when you were just starting out, like just starting maybe on your like publishing path or starting querying? Like, what would you say to yourself?
Read more craft books, because your editing is not on par. I thought it was perfect, man. I was like, oh, this is the book that's going to get me an agent. And then I reread it and I was like, oh, I honestly, I don't know. People ask me what I'd change, and I don't think I'd really change anything at all, because I think that every failure paved the path to my success. And the way that my success is created was because of what I learned when I failed. So like, I think I would probably just give them the advice of like, I'd give my younger self, like, it's going to take a while, but you'll get there. And like, just knowing that you're going to get there. I think that's the hard part for a lot of people. Like you get rejection after rejection after rejection, and people don't know if you're going to get there. But the one thing I never questioned was whether or not I'd reach this point. It was just a question of when. And like, the nice thing is I had a paying job in the meantime, right? Like, I think that's where a lot of people get screwed is that they have a job that they hate and they think publishing is the out. Oh, if I just publish a book, I'll make so much money. No, you won't. Publishing pays nothing. There are so many easier ways to make money. But like, if it's the passion, if it's the thing in your soul, it doesn't cost you anything to do it on your days off, because it's something you would have already been doing. And then if you know that you're going to get there eventually, the rejections don't hit so hard. Like, they might hurt you for a day, but they're not going to hurt you forever. Just write another book, do better, learn more, right? Like, do better, genuinely, like become a better editor, become a better author, and make sure that you have enough to give back to the community when you finally get to that point. Because I think a lot of people succeed too early and they forget that the community is what gets people where they need to be. And then they're like, oh no, it was my book. My book is so good. That's such a lie. Every book is good. There's 1,000 books out there that are so much better than yours that did not get published because they weren't lucky and you were, like the luck has everything to do with it. So when you're up at that point on the totem pole looking down, put down the ladder for the next person, like talk to them, like help the new authors, because it's hard when they're constantly facing that rejection. And it doesn't mean that they're failing, and it doesn't mean that they're worse than you. It just means that they haven't been lucky the way you have,
Yes, I think that's very true. What you're talking about sounds like a lot of trust and assurance, like in the process, in yourself, right?
Yeah, trust in my, yeah. Well, and like, I think that it was like, I came from a place of like, what do I have to lose? And the answer was nothing. I lose nothing but time. But that's time I was already going to be spending writing, because that was my passion from the time I was 16 years old, right? Like, I knew literally in high school that this was what I wanted to do for a living. I knew it in my soul. I could tell. I was like, I'm an author. That's what I'm going to do. So I became a flight attendant in the meantime, and I learned a lot, and I became a better person for it. And I still pursued writing on the side. So like, I didn't have anything to lose. It's the people who have things to lose. They're the ones that get into a desperate state of mind where they can't succeed because they're so desperate to succeed that they inadvertently sabotage themselves along the way.
Yeah.
And I think too, we're lucky because right now indie publishing is a thing, and like anyone can publish at this point. And when I first started, indie publishing was like very much the redheaded stepchild of publishing. Like, it was the place you went when you couldn't succeed in traditional publishing. And that's not true anymore. Now you have the ability to bypass the gatekeepers entirely and try your hand. And if it succeeds, that's awesome. And if it fails, that's awesome too, because you still got some experience and you learned something, right? Like, write something new, make a new pen name, try again, and just keep trying until something sticks, right? Like, you never know.
Yeah, and no matter what, your book is still out there, right? That's
right, like you never know which one. Like people find weird books all the time and make them viral. Like, you never know if that could be your book later on. So like, get it out there, put it out, and see what happens. You lose nothing, right? Like, you lose nothing.
I love it. That is very lovely. All right. Okay. Final question.
Okay.
What is one win that you've had in the past week? It can be anything, big or small.
I started building a cat house. Okay, but like we found, all right, I put it all on my social media, but like we found mice in our basement. I talked to my wife and she's like, well, we can use traps, and I'm like, yeah, but I think we need a cat. And she was like, oh, I don't think we can have a cat. And I was like, no, not an indoor cat, because we have 3 dogs. I don't want to put the cat through that. One of them does not like cats. But there are barn cats that are feral, and we live on 1.5 acres of land. And she was like, well, I guess like if we talk to our neighbors. So we checked with our neighbors, and all of them are like, we'd love less mice. Like, it's just so weird to me, because like, I normally feel like I would have to ask permission from somebody to like get a cat. And I don't, because I'm an adult. And that's weird. Right. And it's like, it feels like a win to me, where it's just like, oh, I'm going to build a cat house. And then I started doing it. And like, that felt like a win to me. It's going to be adorable. I can't wait. It's going to be a little stone cat cottage.
Well, I am very excited about the cottage house. Cozy, beautiful, adorable cat cottage for like the hardened feline that's going to
for the hardened feline feral cat that literally cannot come inside because they're too feral. I'm going to make them a little cat cottage, and we'll put it in the corner of the yard away from the dogs, and they'll have a little place. Probably I'm going to build this cat cottage and they'll never go in it. Watch that happen.
That tends to be how it goes.
Yeah.
If you have any boxes left over from the supply,
right? Like I'll put some straw in a box, and they'd be just as happy as if I had actually built them like a whole house. But like, I'm building a house, and it's going to be adorable. And I am using it as preparation, because we're going to build a chicken coop, I think, later this winter. Actually, on that note, it's so cozy, right?
Thank you so much for being here, though. Truly.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is wonderful.
I'll have like your links and everything in the show notes, so that people can find you. But you absolutely should check out Tomes and Tea, the whole series.
Yes.
There's more coming, it sounds like.
Yeah, hopefully. We'll see. I'm going to take a bit of a break, because I'm kind of cozied out right now. I think I'm going to take a bit of a break and kind of explore some other things. And then I might go back to it, hopefully in like a year or 2. We'll see.
Nice. Breaks are allowed.
Yeah.
It'd be very uncozy if everyone was like, sit down at your desk right now. You must.
Yeah. The one thing that readers can expect is that they can expect nothing. I'm out. I'm chaos.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Once more, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
For listeners, I will talk to you next time.
Cozy Alchemy is brought to you by Authors on the Air, and our theme music is by Cyberwave Orchestra. For everything else, blame Elle. You can find her online at ellehartford.com.